It was not the bear that killed most of them. That is the thing nobody wants to hear because the bear makes a better story. We like to imagine the old mountain men going down in some great roaring battle with a grizzly, claws and teeth and a knife in the dark, dying the way a wild man ought to die. And some few did. But the truth, the plain unromantic truth, is that the animal a mountain man hunted almost never killed him. What killed him, again and again, winter after winter, body after body found stiff in the snow come spring, was a mistake. One mistake, made so commonly, believed in so deeply, that it deserves to be called what it was: a myth. A false belief about hunting that the men carried into the woods like a loaded gun pointed at their own hearts, and it killed more of them than every bear and wolf and cougar in these mountains put together. I have stood in country where men like that died, where you can still feel how far it is from anywhere, how indifferent the cold and the rock and the timber are to whether a man lives or dies out there, and I have thought about how they must have gone. Not in some great roaring fight, quietly mostly. A man who made one wrong assumption and never knew it was wrong until the woods had already closed over him. There is no monument to those men, no story told around the fire, because there was nothing grand in how they died. They died of being wrong about a thing they were sure they were right about, and that is the most ordinary death there is, and the most preventable, and the most common by far. I want to tell you what that mistake was, because it is still being made today, by men who think they are far too modern and too smart to make it, and it is still killing them. The mistake was this: the belief that the hunt was about the animal, that once you had your prey in your sights, the dangerous part was over, that the kill was the end of the danger and the beginning of the reward. That belief, that the moment of the kill was the moment of safety, is the thing that put more mountain men in shallow graves than any creature with teeth. Because the truth is exactly the reverse. For the old mountain man, the kill was not the end of the danger. It was the beginning of the most dangerous hours of his entire life. And the man who did not understand that, the man who let his guard down the instant the animal fell, was the man who did not come home. Let me explain, because this is the heart of it. A mountain man hunted alone, most often, miles and miles from any other soul, in country that did not forgive. He would stalk an animal for hours, sometimes days, all his focus narrowed down to that one creature. And when at last he made his shot and the animal went down, every instinct in him wanted to relax, to let out the breath he had been holding, to feel the flush of success. And that was the trap. Because the moment that animal hit the ground, the mountain man's troubles were just starting. He was now alone, often exhausted, often far from his camp, with a huge, heavy carcass that had to be dealt with right now, in the cold, with the light maybe failing, and the smell of fresh blood spreading on the wind for miles in every direction, calling in every predator and scavenger in the country. The kill did not make him safe. The kill rang a dinner bell for everything that might want to kill him, and it pinned him to one spot doing slow, bloody work with his hands full and his attention down, at the exact moment when he most needed to be alert. The danger did not end with the shot. It exploded with the shot. The myth told him the hard part was over. The reality was that the hard part had just begun. And a man who believed the myth, who let himself go soft and careless and triumphant over his kill, was a man with his back turned to the woods, his knife buried in a carcass, his rifle leaned useless against a tree, his hands slick with blood, and his mind 100 miles away in the warm glow of success. That is how they died, not in glorious battle, bent over their own kill, never seeing the thing that came for them, because the myth had told them the danger was done. But the killing mistake went deeper than just the moment of the kill, and I want you to understand the whole of it. The myth that the hunt is about the animal made men reckless in a dozen ways, all of them deadly. It made them push too hard after their prey, chasing a wounded animal into country they did not know, into the failing dark, until they were lost, far from camp, with no shelter and night coming on, and the temperature dropping toward killing cold. The animal led them, and they followed like fools, their whole minds fixed on the prize, and the country swallowed them. They froze, chasing a deer they would never catch, because the myth told them the deer was what mattered, and the cold and the dark and the distance did not. The old wise ones knew the opposite. They knew that no animal was worth your life, that a wounded deer that ran into bad country was a deer you let go, that the man who chased his prey past the edge of safety was a man trading his life for a meal, and that was a trade only a fool made. It made them overconfident in a deeper way too, the worst way. A man who has killed 100 deer comes to believe he knows the woods, that he is the master out there, that the wild holds no more surprises for him. And that confidence, that comfort, is precisely the thing that gets a man killed. Because the wild does not care how many animals you have taken. The river you have crossed safely 100 times is the river that drowns you on the 101st, when the water is higher than you judged. The slope you have walked easy all your life is the slope that gives way under you the one time the ground is frozen wrong. The cold you have always beaten is the cold that takes you the day you set out a little too sure of yourself and a little too lightly dressed. The old-timers who lived to be old were not the most confident men. They were the most careful. They never stopped being a little afraid, a little humble, a little ready for the wild to turn on them, because they had seen it turn on better men than themselves. The myth of mastery, the belief that enough success made a man safe, was a slow poison, and it killed the confident long before it ever touched the careful. There is a thing the old wise ones understood about this that cuts right to the bone. They knew that the most dangerous moment in the woods is not the moment of obvious danger. It is the moment right after, when the danger seems past and a man lets his guard down. The bear charges, and a man's whole body comes alive, sharp and fast and ready, and most men survive that, because fear makes them careful. It is the quiet moment after, when the heart slows and the breath comes easy, and the man thinks the worst is behind him. That is when he dies, because that is when he stops paying attention. The kill was that moment, multiplied. The greatest letdown of vigilance in the whole hunt came at the exact instant the danger was actually highest. The myth and the reality were pointed in perfectly opposite directions, and the gap between them was a grave. So what did the wise ones do instead? The ones who lived? They flipped the whole thing around in their minds. To them, the shot was not the climax of the hunt. It was the start of the most careful work of the day. The instant an animal went down, their alertness did not drop. It rose. They kept their head up and their senses open even as they worked. They positioned themselves so they could see, and so their weapon was in reach, never buried in their gear. They worked fast and clean, knowing that every minute spent over a bloody carcass was a minute of mortal danger, and they did not linger or gloat or rest until the meat was secured and they were clear of that blood-drenched spot that was calling in death from every direction. They treated the kill as what it was, a dangerous, necessary task to be done with care, and got away from quick, not a victory to be savored. And they brought the meat home, and themselves with it, again and again, while the careless, triumphant men were carried home in spring if they were found at all. Let me show you exactly how it played out, because the pattern repeated so often that the old men could have told you the story before they found the body. A man takes his deer late in the day, further from camp than he meant to go, because the stalk drew him on and on. The animal is down. He feels the rush of it, the relief, the pride. And now he must field dress it, and that is slow, bloody work, and the light is going, and the cold is coming down, and he is tired from the long stalk. The myth whispers to him that the hard part is over, so he does not hurry, he does not stay sharp. He lets the warm glow of success slow his hands and dull his mind. By the time the work is done, it is near dark, and now he must somehow get a heavy load of meat back to a camp that is too far, in the dark, in the cold, in country gone strange and shapeless in the failing light. He is exhausted. He is bloodied, which means he smells like prey to everything out there, and he has lingered too long because the myth told him the danger was past. That is the night a man does not come home, not because a bear got him, though one might, because the myth let him, step by reasonable step, into a situation that the cold and the dark and the distance finished off. Every piece of it traced back to that one false belief, that the kill was the end of the danger rather than the start of it. And here's the part about the blood that the old men never forgot, and the careless never learned in time. A gut pile and a fresh carcass in the snow is the loudest thing in the wilderness, louder than any shout, because it speaks to the noses of every meat-eater for miles downwind. The moment a man opens an animal, he has announced a feast to the whole country, and he has made himself, kneeling there in the middle of it, covered in the same blood, look and smell like part of the meal. The wise old-timer knew this, and it shaped everything he did. He worked quickly. He kept checking the wind and the tree line. He moved the meat away from the gut pile and the killing ground before he rested, putting distance between himself and the beacon he had lit. He never, ever made his own camp right beside a kill, because to sleep next to a fresh carcass was to invite every bear and wolf in the country to join him in the night. The man who believed the myth did the opposite of all this. He dawdled by his kill, made his fire there, even slept there, comfortable and proud, never understanding that he had bedded down inside a trap he had baited himself. The blood that meant success to his mind meant danger to his body, and the two readings could not have been further apart. There was another way the myth killed, slower but just as sure, and it had to do with the wounded animal that did not drop clean. A shot is not always true, and an animal hit but not killed will run, sometimes for miles. Now the myth that the hunt is about the animal becomes truly deadly, because it tells the man he must have that deer, that he cannot let it go, that to lose a wounded animal is a failure he cannot accept. So he follows, and follows, into the thick country, across the river, up the far ridge, deeper and deeper from his camp and his safety, his whole mind fixed on the prize, ignoring the lengthening shadows and the growing cold, and the country turning unfamiliar around him, until he looks up and does not know where he is, and the sun is going, and he has nothing with him for a night out because he only meant to be gone an hour. The wise old-timer had a rule about this that the dead men never learned. A wounded animal that runs into dangerous country or fading light is an animal you let go. The meat is not worth your life. You note where it went. You may try again tomorrow in good light, but you do not chase your supper into your own grave. The man who could let the animal go lived. The man who had to have it, who believed the prey mattered more than his own careful return, fed the country with his own bones, often as not. There is one more face of this myth I have to name, the quietest killer of all, and that is plain exhaustion. The hunt takes everything out of a man, the long stalk, the cold, the tension held for hours, and then the brutal labor of the kill and the packing and the carry. The myth that the danger ends with the shot blinds a man to how spent he truly is, because he thinks the work is done, and so he does not respect what it has cost him. But an exhausted man in the cold is a man in mortal danger. Tired, his judgment fails. Tired, he stops generating enough heat, and the cold begins to win. Tired, he makes the small, careless errors that the wild punishes without mercy. The misstep, the wrong turn, the failure to notice the storm coming or the light going. The old wise ones respected their own exhaustion as a deadly thing in itself, and they planned the hunt so they would never be caught far out and used up at the same time. They knew that the body has limits, and that pushing past them in cold country is a way to die quietly, sitting down to rest for just a moment and never getting up. The myth told men the hard part was behind them right when their bodies were emptiest and most vulnerable, and that gap between how safe they felt and how depleted they were swallowed many a good man into the snow. I think this myth, and the way it killed, has something hard to teach us even now, even those of us who will never gut a deer alone in the snow. It is this: we are most in danger not when we are afraid, but when we feel safe. The accident happens on the easy stretch of road, not the hard one, because the hard one had our attention, and the easy one did not. The fall comes on the way down the mountain, not the way up, when the summit is behind us, and we think the work is done. And most climbing deaths happen on the descent for exactly that reason. The mistake gets made not in the crisis, but in the relief that follows it, when vigilance drops at the very moment care is still needed. The old mountain men paid for this lesson with their lives, so many of them, and they learned it so deeply that the wise ones carried their alertness right through the moment of success and never let the feeling of safety make them stupid. That is a lesson worth more than any hunting skill, because it applies to every dangerous thing a man ever does. The danger is not done when you think it is done. The myth that it is the thing that kills you. The animals were never really the threat. That is the great irony the old men came to understand. The bear, the wolf, the cougar, fearsome as they were, killed only a handful, because a handful is all that ever truly tangle with a man who keeps his wits. It was the man's own mind that was the true danger, his own beliefs, his own confidence, his own fatal habit of feeling safe at the wrong moment. The deadliest predator in the whole of those mountains was the false idea a man carried in his own head about when he was and was not in danger. No claw ever killed as many as that quiet myth did. And the men who survived to grow old and gray were not the strongest or the bravest or the best shots. They were the ones who never quite believed they were safe, who kept one eye on the woods even in the warm glow of a fresh kill, who understood in their bones that the hunt was never about the animal at all. The hunt was about coming home. The animal was just the thing that tempted a man to forget that, and the forgetting was what killed him. So if you take nothing else from the bones of all those old mountain men lying in the high country, take this. The kill is not the end of the danger. Success is not the same as safety. The moment you feel the worst is behind you is the moment to be most careful of all, because that feeling, that sweet, dangerous feeling of having made it, has buried more good men than every beast in the wild combined. The old-timers learned it the hardest way there is. We get to learn it from them, for free, if only we are humble enough to listen. They were not killed by their prey. They were killed by what they believed about their prey. And that, more than any bear, is the thing worth being afraid of.